So we're going to take a look at this Rough Rider 1870 Skinner style blade. It's a 440 stainless blade with G10 handles, just a decent all-around fixed blade with a nice little kydex with it. So right out of the chute, I gotta say, 440 is not the top quality steel that most knife enthusiasts want, but it's known to hold a reasonable edge. This knife is sort of what I would consider a mid-weight camp knife, if I was, to characterize it in any way. I like the G10 scales; they've held up pretty well. I've beat on this thing, I've batoned it. None of the screws have backed out. As you can see, there's like some residue from batoning or whatever on it. It's not rust, but this thing's been through the ringer the last few years that I've had it, and it's held up pretty well. It's still sharp to this day. I like the belly of the edge of the blade. I like the jimping on the back side of it, and I think as a budget blade, you could use this on a belt. For a Minuteman loadout, you could use this on a chest rig. You could use this as just a good woods knife. You could use it for bushcrafting stuff. I've batoned little trees down with it, working around the lower portion of the tree. It scrapes a ferro rod decent as far as like the spine, and it just does all the things adequately. Is it going to be a top quality thing? No, it's not. But it's good stuff for the most part. This Scabbard, while basic, is pretty decent. It's held up the whole time, and it fits like a Condor rigger size belt, the wider type of belt. So I really like the Scabbard as just basic usable equipment. It's not bad at all. I've painted it, and yeah, it looks like shit, but that is what it is. I'll probably hit it with another coat of paint. This is like the third paint job this thing's had, but it looks like shit now, but we'll give it another dusting here, and it'll look perfectly fine. But overall, it's just a budget blade, man. I can't complain about this. I got it for $20 at a flea market in Columbus, Ohio. And, man, it's been adequate every time I've used it. And you really can't go wrong with it if you're just wanting some sort of medium-duty fixed blade. I have zero complaints about it. It stays sharp. And as you'll see in some of these later videos, like these later clips here, it performs everything that you would need it to, and if you were doing social work with this blade, it would sure as hell do that too. Did some feather sticking, and it worked out perfectly fine. This is basically the factory edge I've had on this. I haven't really touched it up or anything, and it's still good and sharp to the point. And I've done cross grain cutting with it, which you'll see later in this video. Well, right here, this is doing a little cross grain cutting to shorten this up, and then I feather sticked out of that. But I've done this to several trees in the woods, not huge ones, but smaller ones, and just worked my way around it and batoned them down. So it's held its edge pretty damn good for being a cheap piece of Chinesium. And as far as Rough Rider blades, this is really the first one that caught my eye, and I was like, I think I like that. Most of the designs from Rough Rider I'm not a fan of, but this one has been pretty good. I like it. It looks good, and it's for damn sure holding up. And I don't care about the specs on most knives. As long as it does what I want it to do and it holds up, that's what matters to me. That's the frame of reference I have for any kind of tool is, can I put this through hard use and it still hold up? And this seems to be doing it with flying colors at the price of a $20 bill. Doing some feather sticking right there, looking, they're not the finest of curls, but they'll catch on a ferro rod. That ain't no problem there. It's for damn sure. Just working my way around it right there. And as you can see, it just did them up just fine, and that was some softer wood. It was some dead dry stuff, but I have some super hardwood that I do that on later in this. And I like collecting tinder off of cedar trees to spark a fire with and use with a ferro rod. And that's good for a knife like this with a good 90-degree spine on it. And sometimes even the jimping helps with that type of thing. So we're going to strike this up and see how it works with a ferro rod. And as you can imagine, it's going to work perfectly fine. This thing, like I said, it does all the things for the price of a $20 bill. It may not be perfect at every task, but it's adequate. Had to do a little restrike on that. Sometimes, second time's a charm. So we get down to a little bit of batoning because everybody wants to see the money shot and have a knife batoned on the video to show it can hold up to vigorous shocks and hits to the back of it. And that's where you're going to find out whether the handles are going to come loose and screws are going to back out and things like that, or if it's just an extremely poor blade. You theoretically you could break it if you put it through too much stress, or if there's a knot in like a longer fixed blade, something like that, you're gonna possibly bend it if you run it through a knot if it's a poor quality blade. This thing's short enough and just seems to be doing the trick. You're probably not gonna have enough length to have a bend problem with this, but I wouldn't, as far as like use case, you're not going to be splitting really thick wood with this knife, but you're definitely going to be able to bust up kindling. I've cleaned a hog with this blade. I've butchered an entire animal and cut up the meat with this knife. It's done all of that with flying colors. So I can't imagine this not being considered a good buy. I don't even know if this is available on the market. I got this in like 2020, and I've just had it, and been using it for the whole time, and it just does everything that I want it to do, and that's what I like about some of these cheaper blades, man. This is a budget-minded channel. I'm not against, the more expensive blades and stuff like that, and maybe I'll get an opportunity to do some reviews and things like that as time goes forward, but like, I'm a budget-minded guy at heart, and it's just fun getting out and reviewing these, and for the money, I can do a lot more different blades, doing a budget price point on them. And like this thing, that starts getting some fine curls. And this wood here is exceedingly dry. I can't even really guess what kind of wood this is. I got it from my brother-in-law, and he had it like in his side yard and didn't want it anymore. So I brought it home, and I've been using it for cooking on campfires and whatever. But this shit is super dry. This stuff is crazy hard and super dry. And it's getting some pretty fine curls as far as this blade, working down the edge of that, and just kind of keep turning it to where you're hitting the sharp pointed 90-degree edge of whatever piece of wood you're using. Is that curled up perfectly? I mean, that looks good right there. That's better than the other softer wood. And then there's the two of them compared together. Overall, I really like this blade as a budget blade. If you found this, it wouldn't be a bad buy. You could use this for just about anything, and it's going to hold up, minus doing some, like, obviously ridiculous tests. Like, I don't even know that a tip test is necessary for things like this. If it's got a thin enough tip, eventually you're going to break it, and this kind of has a thinner tip, so that's a word of caution. But, man, overall, a great blade, and if you run across one, you're not going to go wrong spending a $20 bill on it, especially if it comes with the Kydex. And yeah, this thing's dirty and beat up, but at least it's been used. So this wasn't a straight out of the box review. Oh yeah, I love it, So there's that. So in closing, I highly recommend this as a budget option for a camp knife, bushcraft knife, just a Minuteman knife, whether it's doing social work with it in a combat context, or cutting up meat, or building a shelter, or doing all the things that you would need to do to process an animal down. This knife will do it, and it'll do it at a budget price point. And to quote one of my good friends, Ozark Frontierman, this knife has been sank into more meat than Hugh Hefner. You're not going to go wrong with this as a budget option for any of your tasks. So enjoy it if you buy it. You see it on the cheap, pick it up. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.